Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for attending my talk. My name is Thulisile, Tuli in short, as most of you know me. And today I'll be speaking about the state of Async API initiative. So, a little bit about myself. I'm a community builder. I'm an open source fanatic and I'm a Python programmer. I'm sure like all these three things can show you really that indeed I'm an open source fanatic really. And recently I became a number one, plus one, not number one, a plus one fan for Zenitsu. I really liked Zenitsu before because I thought like he was a coward, but after the last season, I couldn't help but really become curious and become more excited to what is going to bring in the next season. And if you don't know what I'm talking about Demon Slayer. Zenitsu is one of the, should I say Hashira in training or something like that? But yeah, and if you still don't know what I'm still talking about, then I don't know which universe you live in if you don't watch animes or if you didn't watch Demon Slayer. Like literally, I don't know which universe you're living in. But anyway, enough about me. That's a little bit about me and enough about me. Um, let's get right into this session. So when I say that I'm a community builder, there's so many components that comes into mind, and many people have different definitions of how they define a community. And my own definition is that a community is a collective of people who interact with one another in the same environment. This is where innovation often emerges from small dynamic groups rather than large structured efforts. Why do I say that? Because time and time again, it has been proven that real innovation, real game changer innovations comes from small dynamic groups, and a Sync API initiative is one of them. And to affirm what I've just said, I remember when we were in London conference and we were running the API specs booth, and when people came to really understand what Async API is all about, and when we told them that it's not a company, it's just a community, an open source community, and with people from different companies, people from different countries, different continents are coming together to really advocate on something that they believe in. And it was fascinating to see how people were so surprised, like, how is this possible? So this really proves your point. This really proves my point whereby I say that a community is where people from a collective of people who interact with one another, who share the same ideals, who are looking to build innovative solutions and to bring change about in the ecosystem. And that is what Async API is all about. So to understand about the Async API community, you need also to know where we are coming from. And one way is to take a walk down memory lane and look at the history of where we came from. And 2022, our then community manager, who's our now executive director, did a same presentation. So it's going to be like a then versus now kind of session, like to see where we are coming from and how far we have gone. So let's dive into history. Today I'm gonna be your history teacher. um so in 2022, right, our spec JSON schema, as you know, our async API document is heavily reliant on JSON schema. So our spec JSON schema had around 4.6 million downloads. And our overall page views on our async API website was roughly around 1.6 million page views. Our async API Slack then had roughly around 2,000 900 people who were active on our Slack workspace, and we had roughly around 1,000 contributors who were contributing to the async API repos. And also our npm package, where our spec is hosted, had roughly around 7 million downloads. Is it 5 or 7 million downloads between those two? And These were like the roughly the numbers. I know most people will be like, how can you have an npm package having so much downloads? But I'm not gonna get into it. And on 2022 we hosted our first async api mentorship program, and it still goes back to where I said in the beginning that a community is where a group of people come together and bring innovation. So when we didn't make it to GSOC from the previous years, like 2021 and 2022, so we came up with an idea of having our very own Async API mentorship program, and was the year this was birthed. And in October 2022, we had contributors from big corporations such as IBM, Salesforce, and Google. And we had roughly around 60 repositories hosted on GitHub. We have 35 TSC members, 10 who were individual contributors. And on our Open Collective account, we had roughly around 80,000, is it 80K? Okay, 80K on Open Collective. And our Async API Ambassador program also was initiated on that very same year. And also, we started off with the work of our Async API community repo as well. As you can see, these were the sponsors that we had in 2022, and shout out to some of the sponsors who are still with us and still believe in what we are doing in this vision that we currently have as the initiative. But as you can see, we had amazing sponsors from IBM, Equiva, Postman, Solace, and Red Hat. And I don't know. I don't need to say much on this topic, but yeah, we are still a diverse community. We still have, and we had individual and company sponsored members. 10% maintainers were women. 22% of speakers are women, and 6% of open source contributors are women. And we also had maintainers from diverse, like I said, we're still a diverse community, and we have maintainers like, should I say, all around the world, all around the globe, from different continents such as India, Nigeria, Americas, Europe, you name it. We have contributors everywhere, and we're still a transparent community. We still host live streams, and back then in 2022 we had roughly about 80 public meetings, community meetings, thinking out loud meetings. And disclaimer, we didn't, and we still don't make decisions on meetings. So in 2022 we had different challenges, such as the community was growing in a very high speed. We had so many contributors, and back then other challenges were like we had less than expected involvement of companies in maintenance, and we had unimproved actual async API adoption. And some of the solutions that we had for the future, we are still in 2022, right? Was to refresh our code of conduct, have the Async API ambassadors, use cases and knocking on companies' doors to really prove that indeed there are people who are adopting Async API Summit. We were hosting online conferences for the past 3 years. So it was time that we think big and start implementing maybe an API Summit fund redistribution to see how we can use sponsors money and support the maintainers in the community, and also to hire a full-time community manager. So now, fast forward to 2 years, the future is right now. We're now in 2024. So let's see how far we have gone from 2022 to 2024. So our spec JSON schema is, I mentioned earlier that our async API document is structured is majorly reliant on JSON schema, and we have over 37 million downloads. And overall, our async API website since 2021 is roughly around 2.71 million. I still do believe that this figure is not accurate. There is more. Since there was a transition between Google Analytics to the current new version, so some data has been lost and some data was not recorded. But anyway, this is what we currently have, and our Slack workspace has over 5,490 for 5,490 users on Slack in our current workspace, and our GitHub contributors has grown exponentially from 2022. We now have like over like 2,500 GitHub contributors on GitHub. So this is like this information we get it from Linux Foundation. So Linux Foundation does analytics on open source projects, and this is how we I don't know how they collect the data, but yeah, currently we have this amount of active contributors on the Async API repos on GitHub. So our npm package for the Async API spec is roughly around 26 million downloads. I know this is always controversial when it comes to the numbers, like really how. And like I said, I'm not gonna get into it and I'm not gonna touch more on it. But yeah, as you can see, we have grown so much from the past 2 years till now, and we are still a diverse community and we still promote diversity. And I mean, there is nothing you can really say that Async API is not diverse. We're still committed and we have proven it. And currently we have roughly about 72 Async API maintainers. We have 38 TSC members. After the refresh of the TSC members, we have 38 members left. We have 12 plus Sync API ambassadors. So from 2022, we started with nothing, but now we have like 12 plus Async API ambassadors. We introduced working groups, of which is something that I will touch on a bit later. This is where we in the community we have different aspects of the community. So we now have 4+ working groups, different working groups focusing on different areas in the community. And like I said, we have 2,600 active GitHub contributors from all around the world. Our community is still transparent. We're still following the open governance model. So we stream every information that we have on the community is publicly available on live streams, and we still don't make decisions on meetings, except if we do need to make decisions, we put it under TSC voting. And we also now implemented an automated TSC voting, of which is something that I'll also highlight as one of our achievements later in this talk. So we now have a transparent way where you can see how TSC members are voting, who is voting, and the kind of discussions that are being voted on. And as you can see, our sponsors list has grown quite well. So from basis 2022 to now, we really do appreciate the sponsors that are sponsoring the initiative. And trust me, we are using the sponsors money very wisely, of which I will talk maybe on the coming slides. So shout out to all the sponsors who still believe and who are still supporting the initiative and still believe in the initiative's vision. So to really, let's take a look at some of the challenges that we had in 2022 versus how we solve them now. So then these were some of the challenges that we have. Some of them we're still having it till to date, and we're still working on improving it. And some of the solutions that we thought we had back then, we have implemented them. So let's take a look at how we did it or how it's looking like now. So first of all, we now established a code of conduct committee. So these are the individuals. I like to call them the Async API police. I don't know if it makes sense because they are the ones who are on the community doing the work to make sure that it's the code of conduct is enforced correctly. We're still maintaining a safe and open environment for everybody. So instead of having one person who was in charge of the code of conduct back then, we now have a committee of people who make sure our police, like I said, I like to call them the AsyncAPI police, who make sure that everything is in order, the community is safe, our workspace is safe, on conferences, everybody feels like they're in a safe and treated equally without any discrimination. And I just want to give a shout out to Joanne Lee from Linus Foundation for giving us like a guideline on how we can start to build like a code of conduct committee, how we should go about it, and how we can also update like the code of conduct, the Async API code of conduct. So yeah, that is one thing that we achieved. We didn't have a code of conduct committee then that we have now. We have Async API police. Like I said, that's how I would like to call them. Nextly, we wanted somebody to work full time in the community, and yeah, as the person speaking, I think API got me as a full-time community manager. And additionally, this year we got somebody to our community marketing specialist to run the aspect of marketing in our community. We got Bami who is in charge of all the marketing and how we can also improve the marketing as well for both our sponsor from the sponsor side and the community side to make sure that we are doing it right because it was something that we have been lacking for over all these years. We now have case studies and an adopters list. Back then we used to struggle like to really prove to people that there are people are adopting or people are using Async API, and knocking on doors brought us case studies and adopters list. And it's something that there's a point that I will touch on later in regards to the case studies as well. But our case studies in our adopters list has really grown, and we can now prove that indeed there are people out there, the companies, there are individuals, there are adopters out there who really use Async API. And we now have the Async API conference known as so there's a rebrand coming in, but yeah, the Async API Comforto or the Async API conference. This was birthed out of the API Summit idea. So instead of us having an API Summit, we decided to have like an Async API Comforto where we can host mini events on different locations and where people can meet and speak about the Async API. And some of the case studies in the adopters list that we currently have come from the Async API conference, and the conversations that we have at the Async API conference have really brought a lot of change or a lot of um, the words are running out of my mind, have brought us a lot of value in the community. And Async API conference is something really big that we have invested in, shifting from having full-time online conferences to having this conversation in person has really, really brought a lot of benefit to the community. We introduced the Async API bounty program. So we were looking for ways to also redistribute funds, the sponsors' funds. Like I said, we spend our sponsors' money wisely, and we introduced the Async API boundary program, whereby we reward maintainers for their work. And we also were looking to challenge the notion of contributing to open source always has to be free. And the bounty program has proven that. And we also, from the bounty program, that's where we also had like the TSC automated voting system. That is something that was bad. That is something that was implemented because of the Async API bounty program. So as I said, these initiatives that we run in the community are so beneficial, and we are spending the sponsors money wisely as well. And now we got the maintainership program. So we still have the challenge whereby we are growing very fast, and over out of the 5,600 people that you see on Slack community, or out of 72 maintainers, for instance, we have roughly about 2,600 contributors, of which the scale is not really balancing. So something that we recently introduced was the maintainership, a program or initiative that brings about maintainership, whereby instead of contributors to just come and contribute when it comes to mentorships, but it gives them the opportunity to have an idea what it means to be and to take ownership in an open source project, to have a glimpse of what it takes to become a maintainer of a project, and also maybe to cultivate some curiosity to become open source maintainers. So we are still at an experimental phase, but hopefully after this year's mentorship program, and since we are fully implementing the maintainership in this year's mentorship program, we hopefully to next year, after the things that we learn from this mentorship slash maintainership program, we can further like implement it fully, but we're still experimenting. It's still a trial and error, and there's a lot of implementations going on. But yeah, we this is the current solution that we have also to tackle the scale between having so much contributors and less maintainers, and trying to balance up the scale as well. So what is next? What is next for us? Definitely is to get more maintainers. We're still having a challenge that, like I said, we have a lot of contributors but less maintainers. So one of the things that we're looking forward is to also implement the maintainership, to fully implement the maintainership. But we are still learning. We're still learning. It's more like a learning rate if you're from a data science background, whereby the more you train a model, the more it learns. So even for us, we are still implementing, and we're getting so many lessons out of it and improving. So we are the more we are implementing and learning, the more we will improve on the maintainership. Number two is to create educational content. This is some of the feedback that we've got, that is high time that we as the community create educational content, and this has become a really big demand. And this is what we are focusing on, to start having videos, trainings videos, to better understand what is async API all about, what is event driven architecture in general, or APIs. And the next one is this Async API student ambassadors. Um, Unlike only reaching out to industry experts, we are looking forward to also bring in students as well. Sometimes we have seen that we have some students in the community, and they need to learn more about Async API. So instead, we have figured out that what if we take this Async API knowledge to students, to universities. So this is something that we are planning to implement in the coming year. And yeah, let's see how it goes. I don't want to say much about it, but let's see how it also goes. Still push Async API conference on tour. We have gotten so much value from the conferences, from case studies to sponsors, to even visibility in the community, even the feedback on things that we need to improve in the community, such as getting educational content, is some of these things that we are getting from the Async API conference. And also, one thing from my own perspective is also to get more sponsors to come and sponsor the Async API conference tour. Async API conference is a standalone brand, and it requires its own funding, so that we can at least get to support more people to travel, and also like to host more, to have the capacity to host more events in the coming so definitely we're still investing in the Async API conference. And on the 5th, we are looking to still explore more when it comes to open source grants. When we are talking about more maintainers and retaining maintainers, we are also looking at the aspect of participating in open source grants. And we also believe that it's something that can greatly contribute in balancing up the scale when it comes to maintainers and contributors as well. So it's something that we are looking forward. Apart from GSOC, GSOD, we're looking also to expand our horizon, our perspective, and see if there are other open source grants out there, such as the Sovereign Tech Fund, and also get some of our projects funded as well. All right, that will be all from me. Thank you so much for attending my talk, and